When pioneers, trappers and soldiers pushed west across the unforgiving American frontier, they faced an enemy deadlier than gunfire or cold: the lack of clean water. Out there, beyond the settlements and supply lines, every drop could mean the difference between survival and death. Wells were rare, rivers unpredictable, and rain unreliable. Yet somehow these frontiersmen and women found a way. They developed simple, ingenious tricks to pull water from the land itself, methods that still work today, even in the most arid conditions. One of those forgotten techniques became known as the frontier still, a practical, life-saving system for creating water when there seemed to be none. It's not theory, it's not myth, it's a survival method tested by generations who had no choice but to master the wilderness. When the land offered no streams, settlers turned to the ground itself. The earliest American pioneers weren't trained engineers or scientists. They were farmers, hunters and homesteaders forced to learn the hard way. In dry regions like the Great Basin or high plains, they quickly realized something vital. Moisture was always present, even in soil that looked bone dry. The trick was extracting it before the sun burned it away. Native tribes had long understood this, digging shallow pits to capture dew or condensation from cool morning air. The settlers took that knowledge and refined it into a field technique that combined simplicity and physics. The ground still. This emergency method worked by using the Earth's own temperature and sunlight to draw water vapour out of soil or vegetation. Early travellers used nothing more than a shovel, a tin cup, and a sheet of animal skin, canvas, or, later on, glass and cloth. By sealing the pit and channeling the condensed moisture into a container, they created drinkable water. Slowly, but surely. During westward expansion, it saved countless lives on the trails to Oregon, California, and beyond. The frontier still worked because it turned nature's balance to your advantage. So, here's how it functioned. Pioneers began by digging a pit about 2 feet deep and 3 feet wide, large enough, really, to expose cooler soil beneath the surface. At the centre of the pit, they placed a container, usually a metal cup or pot. Then they covered the pit with a stretch material: animal hide, oiled canvas, or later on, a piece of glass scavenged from wagon windows. A small stone was placed in the centre of the cover, directly above the cup, creating a sort of cone shape. As the sun heated the ground, moisture within the soil and air began to evaporate. When that vapour hit the cooler underside of the cover, it condensed and dripped down the sloped surface, collecting in the container below. In arid regions, this slow condensation process could yield 1/2 litre or more per day. It wasn't fast, but it was steady, and in survival, steady wins. Even in the driest climates, the soil actually retains some humidity below the surface, especially early in the morning. That's why, this method still works today. The principle is just timeless. Evaporation plus condensation equals survival-grade water. Modern survivalists call it a solar still, but really it's the same concept that frontier pioneers relied on. Vegetation made the technique even more efficient for resourceful pioneers. Those who truly knew the land improved the basic design by incorporating vegetation, fresh leaves, grass, or even cacti cuttings into the pit. Plants naturally contain water, and when they're heated by the sun, they release it as vapour. The pioneers, they lined the inside of their pits with these materials before sealing them, which honestly dramatically increased the yield. This step really transformed the frontier still into a mobile water maker, allowing travellers to collect drinkable water just about anywhere, as long as there was a bit of greenery nearby. Some accounts from early explorers and US Army scouts mention using prickly pear pads, willow leaves, or even moss to enhance the effect. The process required patience and skill indeed, but you know, it could sustain a person in an emergency long enough to reach safer ground. Quite remarkable, really. For anyone today practicing bushcraft or off-grid living, this same method remains valuable. You can replicate it using a plastic tarp or clear plastic sheet instead of animal hide. Simply line your pit with green vegetation, anchor the edges of your sheet with stones, and place a small rock at the centre to direct condensation. Within just a few hours, you'll begin collecting droplets. Proof that the old frontier science still works. It's fascinating how these age-old techniques continue to serve us, even today. You know, frontier ingenuity wasn't about gadgets. It was about adaptation and respect for the land. Settlers didn't fight nature. They observed it and worked with it. They learned when to dig, early morning or late evening, when the ground's humidity was highest. And well, they discovered that digging near dry stream beds, shady trees, or animal trails often yielded more water vapour than open plains. The land always gave clues, but only to those who paid attention. Modern survivalists often overlook this balance, relying heavily on filters, purifiers, or chemical tablets. Those are excellent tools, but they depend on existing water sources. The frontier method bypasses that limitation entirely. It creates water from the environment itself. You know, it's a reminder that knowledge can be more valuable than gear. The same principles behind the frontier still have, well, been adapted for humanitarian and environmental projects across the globe. In desert communities from North Africa to Australia, solar stills provide clean water using nothing but sunlight and plastic sheeting. Emergency kits for lifeboats and military survival training now include compact stills based on this design. Even NASA researchers studying life support systems for space colonies have in fact modelled water recovery systems on these ancient condensation principles. For preppers and campers today, learning to make one is a practical skill worth mastering. If you're ever stranded or your purification gear fails, knowing how to build a simple condensation still can turn desperation into control. The materials are basic: a shovel, a sheet of clear plastic, a cup, and a bit of patience. But it's the understanding behind it, the same one that kept pioneers alive, that makes the difference. Those early Americans didn't have synthetic filters or carbon cartridges. They had instinct, observation, and experience passed from one generation to the next. When they knelt in the dirt to dig their pits, they were practicing a science born from necessity. Their success wasn't luck. It was earned wisdom. That same wisdom can serve anyone today, whether you're camping, homesteading, or preparing for emergencies. You don't need to be lost in the wilderness to apply it. Even small experiments, like, say, building a backyard solar still, help you understand the fundamentals of heat, condensation, and, well, the delicate balance that sustains life. The frontier still isn't just a historical curiosity, it's proof that survival knowledge never expires. So, the next time you head outdoors, think of the people who crossed the wilderness with nothing but grit and know-how. Their tools were crude, but their understanding was profound. They didn't just endure, they adapted. And the fact that their water trick still works nearly 2 centuries later says everything about the genius of those who came before us. If you found this deep dive into frontier ingenuity fascinating, make sure to subscribe to Echoes of Valor for more lost survival methods, wartime innovations, and the forgotten technologies that shaped our modern world. Share this episode with a fellow history enthusiast or outdoors man. The more we learn from the past, the better prepared we are for the future.